Alright, so, welcome back if you've been keeping up with my channel. Yeah, so this is going to be another version of the My Type series. You know, this is just a chronicling of kind of where I've been recently with my own type. Trying to self-type, understand my own personality type in the MBTI system. MBTI system, the anti-typology system. It's not strictly MBTI. It's definitely not from the perspective I take it from. But yeah. So from the title of this video, I guess you can surmise that this is going to be me talking about why I'm an ESTJ, or why I think I'm an ESTJ. This is as solid as I've been on my type, and I'll go into why I feel very solid about it, obviously. The only other thing I would really consider at this point is ENTJ, and I don't really see myself going back to any of the prior typings I had in other videos. I'm using different definitions, which is why kind of the type is so drastically different. First time I've typed myself as an extrovert, at least on YouTube. I mean, I've considered this type before, but I've considered most of the types before, actually. But this is the first time I've made a YouTube video saying I'm an extrovert. Not the first time I've said I'm a judger. Yeah. So I'm just going to go over the definitions I'm using in this analysis of myself and the historical evidence for that, for this conclusion of ESTJ throughout my life history. And we'll just see how that goes. So function definitions. I'm going to stick to just the concepts of extroverted judging, extroverted perceiving, introverted judging, and introverted perceiving. And then I will flesh out the function oscillations as NT, ST, SF, and NF. I've done something similar in the past, but I'm using different conceptualizations for the functions. Because that's really what's changing. I'm not really shifting on like the data that I'm considering. I'm shifting on like how I interpret the data, the framework that I'm using. So we can start off with extroverted judging. Those extroverted judging functions are extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling, JE. That's essentially just how you impact your environment, how you impact the world, how you leave your mark on reality, really. I'm trying to think of a good example. I'll use this example later, but playing basketball. I don't think it's an STP thing. I think STP might be more like rock climbing or maybe even cross country or track. But basketball, you're trying to get the ball through the hoop. That's not, yeah. It's the thing that's moving, the emphasis on what's supposed to move is something that's not you. It's the ball. It's thinking of a bunch of introverted judging examples right now. I mean, all sports with a ball, really. When you're trying to get a ball across a line, you know, or fighting. I'm coming up with a bunch of sports examples. Engineering, that's something that's a bit broader. You know, you're trying, the point isn't to adjust yourself, which is more introverted judging as far as I can say. The point is to adjust something outside of yourself. That's pretty much it. When you're engineering, you're making an invention, you're making a tool, you're making a machine or a vehicle. That's not you. That's a part of the external world that you're rearranging, pretty much. Extroverted perceiving, that's just external stimulation. That's SE and NE, extroverted sensation, extroverted intuition, reading, watching television, listening to the radio, listening to podcasts, listening to music. All that is extroverted perceiving as far as I'm concerned right now. You take some stuff in from your environment, that's about it. Introverted judging, that's adjusting yourself. You know, like I said, rock climbing, you're moving yourself across a rock face or up a rock face. Running, bodybuilding, stuff like that, where you're changing, not necessarily, there's different ways of changing yourself. You can change yourself like how you actually appear, how you're actually constituted, but you can also change yourself relative to your environment. That's more rock climbing versus bodybuilding. Rock climbing, I think, would be more of an example of introverted judging and extroverted perceiving, because you're looking at the rock face and you're trying to move yourself across that rock face. The rock face is the extroverted perception, and you moving across the rock face is the introverted judgment. Bodybuilding, I think, would be more an example of the last function, set of functions, which is introverted sensing and introverted intuition, and that's more self-awareness or awareness of just internal awareness, internal stimulation. And internal is not necessarily just in your head. I think it can extend to your body, which is why I use bodybuilding as an example, because you're saying, okay, this is what my body looks like now, and I'm changing it with this is what my body looks like now. Introverted perception. I want to change it with introverted judging. And you can kind of see maybe how those different functions can play off of each other. Basketball is more of pure extroversion, when you're moving something, the ball through the hoop, ball across the court, passing. You're using extroverted perception, extroverted judgment to move something around in the external world. The thing that you're moving is in the external world, and you're moving it through the external world. So that's how I look at the combination of extroverted judging and extroverted perceiving. So functional oscillation definitions, I have examples. I think that those kind of speak for themselves. In terms of definitions, I'm still working on getting those definitions to a good place. But in terms of the examples, I think I'm pretty good with those. I think I'll start with NT. That's a combination of intuition and thinking. That's like academics, science, school, engineering, not like engineering in the sense of like plumbing, but engineering in the sense of like building a plane where you need like equations and math. Yeah, it's abstract and logical. It's computer programming. That's another example. Coding for the layman. I think I think that pretty much covers it. That gives you like a general overview of that concept that I'm going to be using to type myself, or that I've been using to type myself. ST, sports. That's a great analogy. I mean, not analogy, but example. Plumbing as well. But that's too specific. How about, I don't know, people who work on cars, not people who work on cars, but working on a car. That's ST. Maybe if you're working on a Tesla and you need to like update the software or something, maybe that's a bit more NT, but with just, I don't know cars that well, but like, fixing a flat tire, ST. Not using any math, it's just, figuring it out physically. It's physical and logical. That's kind of it. SF, music, art, like painting art. Not like super abstract art, which we'll get to with NF, but painting, music, I don't know what else to say. It's kind of that basic as far as I'm concerned. It's feelings and sensations. Sensations that make you feel good. Sensations that make other people feel good. That's about it. NF, theater. Religion maybe a bit, but I think mostly theater is a better example. Religion kind of maybe mixes in the NT to an extent. But I think theater is a good enough example, and that's kind of what I'll be talking about later. So with theater, it's abstract feelings. It's words, it's plays, it's acts, it's ideas that are entertaining. Like, I think television, most television shows, maybe even unless you're maybe watching a documentary, that's a lot of NF. It's just like, oh, that's an interesting juxtaposition of characters. That's an interesting narrative that they've concocted about this certain social time period, social environment. I don't know. That's kind of what it looks like. But that's kind of those are basic examples of each of them. Like, the emphasis of this video isn't really to get into the definitions. It's just to provide examples of them briefly so I can kind of get into how I've typed myself most recently. So now we can get into my type. So I think the best way to start this off is to look at me at the end of high school as a snapshot at high school. Look at me as a snapshot. Look at a snapshot of me at the end of high school. So essentially, my strongest strength, my greatest strength, was my academics. Is my academics still? NT. You know, some people focusing on the sports. I was sporty, but that wasn't my focus. Some people focus on the theater. You know, I was doing theater, but I wasn't that focused on it. But my main focus was academics. And theater and sports and art. I was doing some art too. I was drawing as well, but all that stuff took a back seat. It's not just that it took a back seat. It's that when I look at the proportions of like kind of focus or time that I spent on each of these activities, it lines up very well with NT at the top, ST, NF on the sides, and SF at the bottom. And I can even quantify this to some extent with like the amount of accolades I received for the different activities I was engaging in. Academics at the top, you know, scholarships, stuff like that, high test scores, high standardized test scores, you know, letters from colleges about as a result of those standardized test scores. NT at the top. Basketball on the side. All district or sports on the side. Basketball for me. All district in basketball, went to states in track. You know, got recruited not as heavily as academics for basketball, but by some small Division III schools were like, hey, come play basketball for us. Ended up playing a bit in college at a Division III school, which was, you know, Division III in basketball, but very high level academically. In terms of theater, accolades are harder to talk about, and that makes sense, but because it's my third kind of oscillation. If I had to rank them, I'd say academics or NT is number 1, sports or ST is number 2, theater or NF is number 3, and then art or SF is number 4. And that kind of plays out very well according to like how the function, kind of the oscillations would be arranged. You know, it's not NTSF, which wouldn't really make sense. It's not NTSF, NF, ST or something like that, because that would be like going from top to bottom, then left to right. It's going from top here. It's like it's arranged like this, kind of at a slant. Like this one's at the top, if you're looking at it as a square. Like NT is at the top, ST is on the side, and like lower than this, but still higher than this is NF on this side, and then SF at the bottom. And the thing is, like, I was pretty, you know, I'm capable in all those areas. Like, I'm not as good at, obviously, I'm not as good at theater as I am at sports, maybe, or, you know, athletics, generally speaking. That's a bit shakier, but, like, still, the main focus is just that I didn't really put as much time in to theater as I did sports. But that's getting into, like, the second section. I guess we're ready for now. Kind of lost my train of thought, but I was kind of rambling to an extent. So, because it's not just about like, okay, we see all these things in these proportions, but do we see NT over SF? This is kind of like getting to the OPS animals thing. It's like which is, it's really like when their conceptualization of like a savior function or savior oscillation, I think, is pretty spot on, because like I was responsible for the NT. I was not responsible for the SF. I didn't take the SF seriously. I took the NT seriously. I took academics and sports more seriously than I did theater and art. And it's not just that combination. It's, the way to look at it is academics NT over arts SF, and sports ST over theater or NF. I think that's the best way to look at it. Yeah, so that's about that. And that puts me as a T lead. We don't really know what type of T lead at this point. But, you know, that's coming next. Because you have ST and NT, that's T. And so now we can get into, I already used the term function oscillations. Function axes, that's what we use for, looking at TEFI over FETI, which is what's next. This is harder to see, but I think that's kind of expected because once you get the broad strokes of ST versus NT, the nuances become harder. OPS talks about that too with the way they type people. And this is going to be more freeform because there's like a couple lines of evidence I use to determine TEFI over TIFE. So, theta itself, right? You're the product. You're what's moving. The actor is the FI agent, I guess you could say. Like, the type of theater I did, any type of theater, really, you're acting. You're the person who's going through the motions and the scenes and the plays and stuff like that. You're the one that's moving. Now, basketball, you're moving too, but the emphasis isn't on the emphasis isn't on you, the emphasis is on the ball, and did you get the ball through the net more times than the other team did in a given amount of time over the course of the game. It's not that simple because, like, for example, you could shoot more threes and then maybe you don't need to make as many baskets, but whatever. That's the general concept. I'm not moving like you are moving yourself in basketball. Maybe if you're the same way, like if you have a play and you're like, you have like set pieces and you like use props. Like you're moving the props, but the emphasis isn't on like how well did I. Not even that would be like how well did I swing the sword or whatever in the Hamlet play. Not really. It's more just you're acting. You're the one who's you're moving yourself. You're not moving something else. It's just you. And I guess you have to move yourself to move other things, but the point is how well did you act? How well did you articulate that line? How well did you display that emotion? How well did you encapsulate that character? As opposed to basketball, it's just like, hey, get the ball through the net more times. It's just the score is what matters, I guess. That's as good as I got right now, but that's TEFI that I was doing. Counterexample would be like track or rock climbing. I did run track, but it was just conditioning for basketball, and I did run cross country, which is conditioning for basketball. Basketball was the main thing. I liked basketball better. I also did martial arts. Actually, and that's another sport that I was good at. That wasn't through school. That was through just the karate dojo I was learning at for a while. I was in the newspaper for my success at a couple tournaments, so twice. So that's more ST over, and I spent more time on that. I was more focused on that than I was like theater. I almost quit doing theater like 3 times. Not quit, like I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. I was constantly almost leaving it to the side, not responsible for it. It's not I don't care about this as much as sports. Never really stopped doing sports, except during college. And I stopped doing theater a bit too, and I was more focused on academics and intellectual things, but that's different. Or we're getting sidetracked. It's karate. In karate, I guess that's the martial art I was doing. It was for self-defense. That's why I took it. Not because I was getting bullied or anything like that, but I just wanted to know how to defend myself actually. And that's like, how do I incapacitate or stop this other person? TE. Not like, how do I get more in shape? How do I get my 5K time up? Just to get my 5K time up, down. But it's like, how do I control the outer world? How do I influence external reality as opposed to how do I influence myself? So yeah, that would be track. And then I guess I did do some painting, which I guess painting or drawing, which is more FE. That's more SIFE or SEFE, not sure which. Excuse me. But yeah, that's more FE. But the FI that I wasn't really. I was barely doing that by the end of high school. I was definitely doing theater. And I might have called it forensics a couple times because that's what it's like forensics is like a term for like public speaking and acting that is used in some high schools, and debate. It's like that thing. That it's a word people use to categorize all those different types of public speaking activities. But yeah, forensics theater, that's what I mean. And I wasn't doing public speaking, I was doing like comedic skits and comedic performances with my friends. Um, so that's more of the FI versus FE and TE versus TI. Like a sport, like a TI sport is track. You know, it's you that's performing. And FI activity is more theater. When it's you that's performing, but it's like, you know, it's not about some external object that you're manipulating, which is more maybe painting or javelin throwing. You can do javelin throwing with track, you know, that works too. As T, I would say. I think so. It might be a bit shakier with that, but I think the cleanest example is like, you know, long jump. How far did you jump? High jump. How high did you jump? That's more SE, maybe TI. But yeah, I think that kind of covered that. So that's how we get TE lead. You know, so that's ESTJ or ENTJ by that point. NE versus SI valued. You know, these are the perceiving axes. This is harder. It's more nuanced. Not more nuanced. It's just like, because way to look at it is like if you have TE at the top and you have like in terms of, or TEFI at the top, FETI at the bottom, and then you have the perceiving axes on the side. I think that's how the valued functions work, is like as another mandala or another axis like this. So I think as a TE lead, I have TEFI as my most, and FI theoretically as my most valued functions. I have FE and TI as my least valued functions. And then theoretically speaking, now if you're an ESTJ, it's obviously like shifted a bit compared to, because TE lead, that's just, TE lead just means you're TE at the top, FI at the top in terms of valued functions. It doesn't say whether or not you're an ESTJ or ENTJ, which would be shifting a bit that way, clockwise or counterclockwise. Any SI over any SENI. This is shakier, you know. I could make a video next week about why I'm an ENTJ, and that would be that big of a shift. You know, it's entirely possible I've overlooked something in this aspect or this regard. But kind of looking at the types of theater that I did, types of sports that I did, it's not clear, because honestly it's not clear, because with basketball that's very like SE, you know, you're reacting to stuff in real time, not that much SI in terms of like, I mean, maybe you got to play or something, but I don't really even know how that plays out. But so I did like theater in high school, which is when you're working off of a script, an NI script, and you're acting it out with FI. If you're directing a play, that's actually FE. You know, that's a good example of that. But with acting off of a script, there's no real time. You're not reacting to anything in real time with a script. It's all practice and routinized and just kind of driven into your body and mind just through repetition. What I started doing in college was more improv. You know, I even tried stand-up out for a bit. I didn't like that as much as improv. I don't think I like stand-up as much as I like improv. Because with improv, I think that's more of an NFP thing, where you're reacting with yourself to like a line or a suggestion that somebody says. So there's that line of evidence. There's also the line of evidence. I've done stand-up at like comedy venues, like open mics. I'm not getting paid to do stand-up at this point. But I've done open mics before. And I've done open mics where I've had prepared material. I've done open mics when I've tried to just improvise with nothing. And that's not gone as well as when I've had prepared material. And it's also not gone as well. This time where I was given like the host for the open mic actually gave me his set of notes he had for the night. And I just riffed on those for 5 minutes. That was the best open mic experience, like results that I've gotten in terms of laughter and, you know, just people enjoying what I was doing. So that looks more like any FI over NI FI. Sorry, any FI over NI FI. But then we look at like all the time I spent playing basketball, which was a very real time, like reactionary activity. You know, sparring and karate. I mean, actually, when I look at karate, I was actually probably better at just doing katas, which is just, well, katas are probably just SITI because you're not affecting anything. You're just moving yourself, going through the motions, but you're not fighting anybody. You're not trying to knock anybody out or score a point on anybody, and you're not, yeah, reacting to anything in real time either. I mean, this is what I'm saying. This part is kind of more difficult, but I didn't actually make a note of this at my. Well, I guess I call this a pseudo script, but I do have, right. It's much more shaky at this point. Like it's, I would say, like I do sometimes. I'm not saying like it would be incorrect to say like, oh, I sing to myself sometimes. Therefore, I'm SI and FI heavy or whatever. Uh, but the action of singing to yourself is more ISF because you're not reacting to anything like dancing to a song. That's more SEFI because you're reacting to the music that's outside of yourself. You're controlling your body in coordination with the music that's playing outside of yourself. Versus with singing a song that you already know and you're not really improvising off of anything that's coming from the outside. That's more just SIFI when you're reacting to something that's internalized inside of yourself. So it's like I do that more than I kind of like dance or try to freestyle rap or whatever. Rapping would be SF. Freestyle rapping, I guess, would be SEFI. It's really hard to see the rest of it, though. That's kind of where I'm at, you know. ESTJ likely, just based on those other. It's really the main thing for ESTJ over ENTJ is like improv over stand up. That's the thing. Like I'm gonna like doing both of those. It's just a matter of like it's not gonna be my strength, but I'm gonna like doing both of them, and it's just a matter of which is valued more. They're gonna both be valued because they're kind of both on like this side of the TEFI, SENI, NESI diamond, I guess you could say. But yeah, shaky at this point. You know, ESTJ, ENTJ, one of those two. Likely ESTJ second choice, ENTJ. But those are top two at this point. I might even just change this video to like ESTJ / ENTJ. But I like having like a solid conclusion. Other lines of evidence for TE, I guess this can be the conclusion. It's just kind of like all the building, built a lot of Legos, built a lot of train sets when I was younger. It's kind of like the first thing I was doing. You know, yeah, you know, listen, like being read to, like hearing stories told. That's more any. You know, it's not. You're not receiving raw data. You're receiving like words and stories, which is more any. You know, the raw data would be like listening to music, going outside, watching people, watching birds. I don't know, something like that. That's about all I got. Yeah, ESTJ, pretty definitely solid TE lead. ESTJ or ENTJ, and I guess we'll see where I'm at later. But I'm probably going to do a how to type video soon, so look out for that. How to type yourself video because I think that's very useful. And I'll just kind of go through the method that I've used on myself, and I'll share that. All right. Thanks for watching.